Let's say that we would like to export any good. And to export any good, we need to get different permits from different ministries. But how about if we try to get those permits from just one central portal? It will save a lot of time, and it could save also a lot of resources, monetary resources.
Welcome to Trade Treasury Payments, the podcast unlocking the future of cross-border finance.
From transaction banking and money movements
to liquidity, treasury, and cash management.
We bring you expert insights and the latest trends shaping global finance.
I'm Carter Hoffman, Trade and Technology Editor at Trade Treasury Payments. We're here today at the Asia Pacific Economic Corporation in Singapore, and I'm joined by Carlos Kuriyama, the Director of the Policy Support Unit. Carlos, welcome to Trade Treasury Payments.
Hi, Carter. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So if you just want to start with a quick introduction, tell us a little bit about who you are, some of the work that you're doing, and where you're from.
My name is Carlos Kuriyama. I'm the Director of the Policy Support Unit. We are the Economic Studies Office in the APEC Secretariat. And what we do is to provide support to our stakeholders, namely committees, working groups, senior officials. So what we do is to prepare economic reports that help our stakeholders to improve their quality of their deliberations and decision-making process. So what we do is a lot of work regarding three main economic drivers. The first one is about trade investment. The second one is about innovation and digitalization. And the third one is about improving the quality of growth in terms that growth has to be strong, balanced, sustainable, inclusive, among other features.
So if we just start with a bit of that 30,000-foot view of your organization, we just got a little bit of the background there, but what are some of those core priorities that you guys are working on? And more specifically, how have those shifted that you've seen in the past 5 or so years?
A lot of the work that we do here is about trade and investment. So in the early years of APEC, there was a lot of emphasis on trade and investment liberalization. And we still discuss some of those things, but I think there's right now more emphasis on what is related to trade facilitation, investment facilitation, business facilitation in general. There's also a lot of emphasis about structural reforms, on taking actions, making certain policy decisions that are going to make the economy more resilient. So those are, I would say, some of the main areas where now the discussion is moving to.
And in terms of day-to-day, in terms of building that resilience, what does that look like on the ground for the conversations that you're having with clients?
For example, in terms of resilience, this is a word that is being used very frequently nowadays. And what we are noticing is that many of the policy shifts, many of the issues that are affecting the economy are forcing firms to rethink how they do business. Let me give you an example. Let's say 10 years ago or so, most of the firms were using a just-in-time model in a way that they source parts, components, technologies from all over the world. They just found a place that was cheaper, faster, most effective way to get the things. But now they are shifted to this just-in-case model in which they are building redundancies. They are not necessarily sourcing the parts, components, the technology from the most efficient place, effective place. They are doing it from closer markets, from markets that are like-minded markets. And so at the end, the building redundancies means that, okay, we are working towards better resiliency, but building resiliency is more costly. So we are now basically putting in the balance the long-term resiliency versus short-term profits. And I think this is motivating this change in the discussions as well. That's why we're talking more about facilitation, supply chain resilience, among other matters.
And when we talk about some of those longer term trends in the industry, one of the things that comes up again and again that we're hearing in these conversations that we're having at conferences is that push towards digital trade and digitization in general. So can you talk through a little bit about the role that APEC is playing in pushing that digital shift agenda in the industry more broadly?
Yes, what we would like is to basically find ways to improve the way to do business. So we need to make business cheaper, faster, and more efficient, more effective. So this digitalization is part of it. For example, in one international transaction, we need approximately, let's say, 10 to 20 pieces of paper, 10 to 20 different documents. And that involves also 10 to 20 different agencies, institutions. If we do all of this in a digital way through business portals, official portals like single windows, we could save time and cost. So there are some studies, for example, in the Asia Pacific that say that if we just prepare all the documents digitally, we use digital documents, that could represent trend gains of around $5 to $11 billion. I mentioned that many of the documents now are paper-based. And what we heard is that around 75% of these documents are retyped at some point. So if everything is digital, I think we will have a lot of savings. And that could also help companies, the governments, to have more resources to use it in other things that are more useful.
Again, with a lot of the conversations that we're hearing around the industry on digitization, it's a lot of theoretical ideas and whatnot. And I feel like sometimes it can be difficult for people to translate the kind of high level understanding into on the ground action of what's actually going on. Do you have any specific examples of work that you're doing in the space that can help paint that picture for people?
Exactly. Let's say that we would like to export any good. And to export any good, we need to get different permits from different ministries. But how about if we try to get those permits from just one central portal? It will save a lot of time, and it could save also a lot of resources, monetary resources.
Again, I would imagine a lot of that work towards digitization, it's not something that any one organization can accomplish on its own. How is APEC working with some of the other organizations in the space, like WTOs or the ICCs, for example, to help push that digitization agenda?
There's a lot of exchanges of information. We are participating in different events, meetings to share our views. And I think all institutions want to encourage governments, firms to adopt digital documents. They would like to encourage everyone to move towards paperless trade. I think that's a way to increase a lot of efficiencies. So let me give you some examples. One of the discussions that we have in APEC is to try to incorporate some aspects of model laws to use paperless trade. And I think for that, what governments need to do is to also adopt their regulations. One way that could facilitate a lot this move towards paperless trade is to have regulations that give equivalent value to digital and paper documents. So in some places, digital documents don't have the same value. That's why companies still are using paper-based documents.
Hey, enjoying this podcast? Hit that follow button for more. Done? Let's get back to it.
I want to shift gears a little bit now and talk about sustainability. But before we do that, I know sustainability can be a very broad term that can carry a lot of different meanings for a lot of different people.
Yeah.
So to start things off, what does sustainability mean to you?
It means to have the capacity to use resources on a constant way throughout the years. So there are many meanings for sustainability. We could talk about sustainability from the environmental side, but we can talk also about sustainability on how we are using financial resources properly, and those resources have the chance to last for a longer period of time.
So on that note, can you talk a little bit about some of the work that APEC's doing towards promoting sustainability as you've defined it there?
I think there are many ways that we are doing right now about sustainability. For example, in terms of inclusion, SMEs. So we find that one of the main problems that they get is to have access to credit. And so we're trying to find ways in which the conditions to access to credit are conducive for them to start business. We can see, for example, that the interest rates that are charged to small firms are much higher than the interest rates that are charged to large firms for loans. I think what we're trying to do is to encourage more competition in the financial sector. We would like also to promote the use of positive information for credit information firms. It's not only whether a person of a firm paid the loan on time, but it's also if they have paid their, let's say, utility bills on time. And that could create some history that could facilitate SMEs to have access to resources to conduct their business and to, who knows, in the future expand, implement new lines of business, projects, among other things.
What are some of the biggest challenges right now that you're facing in terms of trying to get that financing towards SMEs? In theory, everything you just talked through sounds very simple and very obvious, but what's stopping that from coming and becoming the reality?
It's not easy to find the resources, but I think governments are trying to encourage the ways to do it. I think also the companies, the private sector is playing an important role, and they know that there are big opportunities. There are some ways, for example, in terms of supporting microfinance. Businesses don't have to start big. They could start small and little by little continue expanding. In some places, what governments are doing is to request banks to use a percentage of the resources to credit that is directed to small and medium enterprises. It's a sort of a mandatory allocation. Philippines is one case that has been relatively successful.
Can you tell us a little bit more about specifically the case of the Philippines?
It's not just in the Philippines, but I think all over the world, small firms have more problems to access to capital. And why is this? They don't have collaterals. They don't have credit history. Governments can find a way to encourage private firms to allocate resources to certain sectors. And that's what is happening, for example, in the Philippines.
So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about trade flows generally. One of the trends that we're seeing now is a shifting of those trade flows around. Kind of the idea of connector nations has come up a lot, growth of South-South trade. How have you seen these trends play out? And is there anything that APEC is doing to help promote some of those opportunities that might come up out of those?
Yeah. We are looking now at how these trade flows are evolving. And so actually this year we are noticing an increase of trade. And this is because there's a lot of front loading in anticipation to restrictive measures. There is a lot of, I would say, activity within Asia. So the intra-Asia trade has remained strong. There's a lot of trade going on between Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia. I think also there has been some interest from governments to basically have agreements with others, like digital economy agreements, trade agreements as well. Last week, for example, there was an announcement about the president of Peru going to Indonesia to sign an economic partnership agreement that has a strong trade component. There, we see in the news also about economies seeking access to be part of the CPTPP. Not long ago, UK became part of the CPTPP. Now Costa Rica is having accession talks with CPTPP. And there are others in the queue as well, like for example, China, among others. In RRCP, for example, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, there are some accession talks as well. So Hong Kong, China is also part of this accession talks, if I'm not wrong. So there's significant interest to have some trade deals, arrangements. And this is also because it's the interest of everyone to ensure that it's important to diversify. It's not good to have all the eggs in one basket. So I think that's the logic that everyone's following.
So if you could get one short message out to as many people in the industry or the space, clients that you're speaking to, as you could, what would that message be?
The message is that we are facing increasing uncertainty, And that's something that we need to find a way to fight against, I think. And international organizations are the perfect place to try to find synergies, explore opportunities for mutual collaboration, discuss our differences, and find ways that we could resolve these problems and restore trust and bring more certainty. I think for businesses, it's hard to do business and create new jobs if the rules of the game are changing every day. If the policies are unstable, it doesn't help. But if we find a way to bring more certainty, that's going to help a lot to the economy, and that will also help us to create jobs.
So finding ways to increase that certainty, whether that's through collaboration, some of the other things we talked about, digital trade, sustainability, all of these ideas, and bringing it all together to really help promote that economic development for a lot of those organizations around. Carlos, thank you so much for being here on Trade Treasury Payments.
Thank you so much, Carter.
And don't forget to follow Trade Treasury Payments
on your favorite podcast platform.
Thanks for listening.